Good evening. Welcome to the Township Board of Trustees meeting for Thursday, January 9th. Ms. Lane, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So as I call the meeting to order, I would ask for approval of the consent agenda and the regular agenda.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Is there support?
Support.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, we will open the floor for public comment. We'll start on the left side of the room and ask if there's anybody that would like to make public comment. Anybody on the right side of the room care to make public comment? Anybody in the back of the room care to make public comment? Mr. Anderson? Good evening.
Good evening. Clerk Lane, Larry Anderson, 6545 Kings Point Road. I've been paying attention to the last few township meetings. A little disheartening by some of the actions I'm seeing. Quite disappointed, actually. There's been a lot of talk, especially last meeting, about attorneys, different opinions of attorneys, and who we should go with and what so forth. And I'm going to start by saying Mr. Laddie is a great municipal attorney, second only to his father. Okay? He can give great opinions, but he's a municipal attorney. If you're looking for labor relations attorneys, you need to look to a labor attorney. If I need heart work, I don't go visit my orthopedic surgeon. Okay? And it's the same thing here. The lawyer that I have that does my estate and trust is an exceptional lawyer, but if I'm facing prosecution, that's not the one I call. Okay? You even said it yourself, Mr. Laddie, that you could get a room full of attorneys and get 7 different opinions. That is true. So the fact that this board wanted to totally throw the other opinion of your labor attorney out the window because it didn't line up with his, I think is a terrible, terrible disappointment. Okay? You guys can say, this is something that could get this township sued for $1, $2, $3 million in a heartbeat. You need to do it right. I'm also watching, and it appears that some of the board members up here feel that the department heads should report to the board. That's a terrible, terrible idea. Any legitimate municipality does not do it that way. You hire a good township manager or superintendent, and you let them manage. Okay? If you have a Parks and Rec director or any other department head report to the board, that person now has 7 bosses to please. And what comes down to it is, okay, if I can keep those 4 happy, I can keep my job. And they're doing what they have to do to make you happy, not doing what's best for the township, the residents. It's a terrible idea, and it's not the wrong road. Hire good leaders, let them lead. Your township superintendent, Dennis here, Dennis can manage the day-to-day stuff. He can manage the people. He reports to you. Okay? You guys run him, and it trickles on down. If it's not done that way, it's going to go sideways. The front door right there will be a revolving door of employees leaving because they don't get along with so-and-so, or this man said something I didn't like, or that department just screwed me out of this, and that can be prevented through its proper structural organization, okay? And that's how this should be run. That's how any legitimate municipality runs it. Another thing I see that I really don't like is the structures of the meetings and how they're run. Some of you don't know this, maybe you do, I don't know. I sat in those chairs for 8 years, okay? I started attending township board meetings in 2006 and just observing what goes on as a resident. I wanted to get involved. Kind of like Mr. Guzak, I was every meeting. I ran for office in 2008, won my first term, ran again in 2012, won my second term, okay? We never allowed, when the meeting agenda was printed, before the agenda was approved, you can make a motion to add an item to the agenda. It would be discussed. Most of the time it would be added to the agenda for the following meeting, as a matter of fact, but not necessarily at that meeting. 2 weeks or the prior Tuesday meeting, an item was amended to the agenda after the first agenda was already approved. It's disorganized, unethical. And what's really bad about that item that you threw on the agenda really quickly on a Tuesday night committee of the whole meeting when the public is not here and you're not in front of other residents is the fact that you guys threw yourselves a 70% bonus. Outrageous. 70% bonus. Yeah, I did your job. I know what your pay is. You're underpaid. But I didn't do it because I wanted a job. I didn't do it for the pay. I did it because I wanted to serve the community that I live in. And I thought we did it well, and we had things going on the right track. You guys should be flying about 10,000 feet, looking out over what's going to be done. What do we have to do tomorrow? What can we do now that's going to make that plan come together in 5 years? That's your responsibility. Control Dennis. Dennis will take care of everything from 5,000 feet down and run the day-to-day. And then his managers below him. Simple. A business runs that way. A legitimate municipality runs that way. We need to run it that way. Don't turn it into a circus like some of our neighbors to the Flint are. Okay? So, I also heard one particular board member say at the Tuesday night meeting that I watched that this is the most professional board in Blanc Township's history. Really? I asked, how do you know that's the most professional board? Because I sat in these rooms from 2006 to 2016. I didn't see you here once, so who were you watching to make yourself believe that this is the most professional board in the history of Grand Blanc? Even the eight years I sat on the board, I wouldn't say we were the most professional. I think I've seen some prior to me that I look up to. There's a particular board member, this is the reason I ran, is because I admired him so much. But I wanted to do that. So, I don't think this is the most professional board. Monstrosity, most professional board since you've been elected, but not the most professional board. So, respectfully, Mr. Bennett, you're doing a fine job. Thank you, sir. Kathy, we often bump heads. You know that. We often bump heads and don't agree. But when it comes to the work of a clerk, Kathy, you're the best. Earl, keep on the numbers. Hawkeye, you don't miss anything. I appreciate that. You do a fine job. You've got a good staff around you. So, adios. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I said thank you.
Oh, okay.
Anybody else in the back row wish to make comment? Yes, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. Kevin Babcock, 8067 Flintlock Road.
I'm sorry, sir, 80s?
67 Flintlock Road. Actually, it's Mount Morris, but I'm the tournament Fire Stick College Exposure Tournament Director here in Grand Blanc. I also run the Fire Stick Fast Pitch here in Grand Blanc. We've been based out of here for the last 15 years. I ran the tournament for the last 10 years out of Grand Blanc. I'm here tonight to make sure that, I know there's a lot of changes going on with the Parks and Rec of who's going to end up taking it over or whatnot. But my main concern here is to make sure that our dates are secure for that event, which is July 10th, 11th, and 12th. I don't know who's going to end up being the director of Parks and Rec, so I'm just here to ensure that those dates are secure, and the reason I'm doing that is because we have 100 teams and I'm already full. Now, out of the 10 years that this coming year will be our 10th year, so we've been doing it for a decade. This has been the fastest that the tournament has been full. We've had great success here, and obviously we've had huge economic impact in Grand Blanc also. With that being said, too, most of, well, I'd say the majority of the hotels here in Grand Blanc are full already. We're maxed out, and actually we're trying to get additional rooms for 3 more teams in Grand Blanc. So with all the changes going on, I just want to make sure that those dates are secure, because now if I don't have the fields, obviously that becomes a huge problem for myself and all the teams coming in and the college coaches. So that's kind of what I'm here for tonight. I also, along the way, to get us to the point we are here, is I just want to, on a side note, tell you guys how appreciative I am of the people that's helped me along the way. Jamie Weasel is obviously not here any longer. Carol Newman, obviously, that's taken over, and she's done a great job in the last year. And Chris Hutzer and Jerry Lint. Those 2 gentlemen right there are unbelievable at what they do. Chris has been with me the whole time when involved with running the tournament, and he is absolutely amazing. And I just want to share that with you and let you know that there's not a time that I can call him, even at his home when he's not working, about stuff going on at the park or what I need, and he's willing to help me out anytime. I don't know a lot of people that will do that on their off time, and I just want to let you know how appreciative I am of that. And there's not a guy, in my opinion, that knows more about the parks than he does. So as these changes come forward, I hope you guys keep that in mind about those two individual workers, because they are incredible. And it always hasn't been that way. When we first started, it wasn't always that way. So I just want to let you guys know that, and I appreciate you guys' time. And I don't know if Carol's going to continue or how long she's going to be, involved or whatnot. I just want to make sure those dates are confirmed so we don't have any problems along the way as far as the hotels, the teams, the coaches, and everybody involved. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And we appreciate having the tournament here in Grand Blanc Township. Anybody else wish to make public comment? Mr.
7212 Porter Road. How are we doing this evening?
Good evening.
Evening. I wanted to bring up the MOU. Okay, I went to the city's meeting last night and I heard there was maybe a change made in it by Mr. Griffin. And I'll just say what he said, okay? The parties, said he's adding this to the MOU. The parties now wish to totally amend the previous resolution, period. I don't know what he meant by period. The terms of this agreement shall supersede in control and until such time that the resolution is amended. Now, I don't know if we know about this, or my point is, if it's been amended, please put it in your packet and make it public, because that's not in your packet. It was not in the city's packet. So what he was presenting wasn't even in the packet. So I'd like to bring on another item, item 13. Parks and Recreation Commission would become dormant, and that's item number 13. And on item number 13, it says that if anybody wanted to pull under this MOU, it would be a 30 days notice. And then he went on to say that the Parks and once the township took it over and moved everybody and did their thing, that if anyone pulled out of it, that the township had 90 days to put it back the way it was. I don't know how you could put it back the way it was. So I'm just bringing this up. I don't know what you guys can do about it. And then it was brought up the programmer, and there was really a little bit of talk about this. It says here programmer's salary, and there was a little kibitzing going on amongst the board members. And they were saying, does this include the benefits, FICA and all, the cost of the programmer? You got to give him a desk, you got to give him a phone. No, it only says salary, so we're going to pay 11% of the salary, not the cost of that programmer. So I just went for a loop. I just want to tell you what happened there. And it's a mutual operating understanding. What I heard at that meeting, you're understanding one thing and they're understanding another. What's in the packet is something different than what they're talking about. Let's make this thing work. It's just awful confusing. So, and then I want to just get down to this MOU signature block. The first one is the schools. Superintendent, Jerome Chisholm. He's an attorney. The school superintendent is Gardner, I thought. How can he sign this for the school? He's an attorney. At the bottom we have two attorneys, one from the city, one from the township. I understand that. I just don't know how he can be represented as superintendent. But maybe I got something wrong. And the city's got a signature of the mayor, and that's fine. And in the township, it's left blank. Who from the township is signing this? So I just want to bring them things to your attention. Some things are going on, but what I'd really like to see is what you are approving being in your packet, not what you discussed, because I'll read what's in the packet, not what you discussed. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Erb. Anybody else wish to speak? Okay, seeing no other public comment, we are going to close public comment and bring it back here to the dais to our board. And we've got on the agenda the approval of the minutes from December 10th, December 12th, and December 20th meeting. We can either make a motion to approve them as a whole or individually, whatever your wishes are.
I so move.
Support.
To
As a
approve,
whole.
to approve all three dates, okay? It's been seconded. Any discussion?
Just one quick comment. Did we include the final address information?
Yes, we did, as you requested.
Thank you.
What was that, to include what? I'm sorry.
On the one section where the police officer spoke, Mr. Mansour thought the address should be, the POAM was what was mentioned at Tuesday night's meeting, so that's what I put in there.
Okay, their statement, you're saying?
Yes, followed by an address,
Okay,
rather than any individual addresses.
okay. All right, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we've approved the consent agenda item. On to operational issues. The board will consider a motion to approve Director Sostak's request to order a post-retirement health benefits actuarial valuation prepared through Rodwin Consulting at a cost of $7,000 for the other post-employment benefit valuation and an additional $5,900 for the report containing financial reporting information pursuant to GASB 74/75 for a total of $12,900.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Support.
Okay, yes, Mr. Massey?
The ordinance benefit, I'd like for the superintendent, do you mind explaining that again about, it used to be every 3 years, now it's every 2 years?
Oh.
And the price is about the same, maybe a little.
Sure. So
That's
what
expensive.
Trustee Massey has asked me to, just to point out is that we're required to do these actuarial valuations, and prior to, or previously, we only had to do them every 3 years. The law has changed on those, and now we do them every 2 years. A big part of that has to do with the effort and transparency for reporting for municipal governments, is that we really report any unfunded liabilities associated or how well we're funded with any of pension plans or, in this case, the post-employment retiree health benefit. And what this does is it keeps us, we're going to do it every 2 years now, and then we also, as part of GASB reporting, we do a roll-up in that mid-year so that we can show that we have where we're at exactly on those actuarial benefits. So it is a change, but this year it's the same amount as the last time that she asked us. So the board's being asked to approve hiring Rodwin Consulting to do this actuarial valuation for us, and it is at the exact same cost of service that we had at the last one. Is that okay?
Yes. Thank you.
Any discussion? There's a motion and second on that, Ms. Lang?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, item B, under operational issues, the board will consider a resolution to join the Michigan Liquid Asset Fund, MILAF, MILAF/GovMIC, GOVMIC program as requested by PFM Asset Management. We employed the use of PFM, Mr. Guzak, myself, and Ms. Sostak, and I'm not sure who else, have scheduled a meeting for later this month to meet with PFM, but we need this to move forward. Mr. Limita?
Yesterday, the board had a few questions about this, and I did ask Director Sostak to be here this evening. So Kathy, if you would come up to the podium, I would appreciate it. And then if there's any specific questions that we have for her in regards to this document or as part of this, she'd be happy to answer those.
Good evening, Ms. Sostak.
Good evening.
So it's required, I imagine, by PFM that if we're going to put any of our liquid money in this fund, that we would need approval by this board to do so.
Correct. This is just for the money market portion of it.
Right.
And they require that this resolution be approved in order to put any funds into that.
Okay. And we were able to arrange a meeting for later this month with PFM?
Yes, I believe it was the 23rd.
Okay. At 3 p.m., I think.
Yes.
Okay. So to move forward, we need this, otherwise they can't move forward with using this fund.
Right, that's correct.
Okay. Any questions?
And I did want to point out, Kathy, if what I explained to the board on Tuesday night was the names that we filled in here as far as what they were requesting, and some people who have access to this, that the one that was in the packet showed that we had the treasurer, Guzak, as well as finance director, Sostak in as the officers and officials for the local unit who are approved as part
That's
of PFM.
correct. One is to sign documents, the other is to do transactions within that account. Those two names were placed in there because that's in accordance with our investment policy. It can be, any other individuals as well, but.
I'm satisfied with it. With having two individuals and you and Mr. Guzak being the investment official and deputy investment official, I think it's
Right,
fitting
correct,
that you be in
yes.
the document.
Yes.
Ms. Lane?
I believe one of the questions, Kathy, from Tuesday night was, if we sign this document for the liquid assets, there are other programs similar to this that you and Mr. Guzak have already utilized for some time. Could you also, if these other investment portfolios that you've been used to have a higher rate, can you use them, or are we limited to just using this particular product from PFM?
No, with PFM, it is this board's, whatever their preference is, to put, if they want to put the 100% of the investment portfolio with PFM or any percentage, PFM has no requirements on that. By signing this document, it still doesn't require us to put anything in there. However, with the approval of the investment policy, the board at that time wanted 100% of the assets, other than those that are in our bank account, to go to PFM. So it's already been a decision made by this board.
Yes. Well, even with the signature on this or the approval of it, it doesn't mean that we're going to, we haven't
No,
determined how much money's going in there.
Right,
or what have
it
you.
would still be, up to
Yeah.
this board to determine how
And
much
So
goes
the
with it.
options are still available wherever it's best for the township for the long run?
Yeah, if at
With
any point in the
PFM.
future the board determines something else, we can take all the funds out of there and move them anywhere. And I think there was also a question the other night about the time frame, and we can do it the same day. It's just, the only reason it would take one day would be as if we use ACH, which is a little bit cheaper from bank fees. But it's a banking determination. There's only a requirement that we have our request in by 1 p.m. and we could have it.
Mr.
that day.
Guzak?
Yes, I did get a hold of Mr. Berry and talk to him, and it is true, because I was the one that brought it up about the 24 days. He said, well, there's two options. If you use the ACH, like Kathy said, it takes 2 days. You gotta do it on a Wednesday if you want it out Thursday. If you wanna do the wire, which we're doing, we can do it on that day. And he said this resolution is actually for the liquid fund as well as the long-term one. This is a resolution that covers both. So there will be two separate accounts. And then, of course, the committee is going to decide what percentage is going to be in long-term and what percentage is going to be in short-term. But I did discuss with him quite a bit, so I got all my questions answered. So.
Question?
Mr. Mansur?
So I guess the question here is does this resolution, as written here, need to be amended to include a reference to the long-term asset fund, or is it?
Not according to Mr. Berry.
Okay, fine.
This was the resolution that was provided by PFM.
Right.
Okay.
And he did say at any point in time, if you wanted to go to a different fund, because I brought that up, could we go to like a Michigan Class or someone else? He said you could at any time. This just allows us, if we
Another
got to have this option available, because if we want to go there, if you don't sign this, you're not going to be able to get into that liquid fund.
Yeah.
If we want to put part of it into another liquid fund, we can still do that if the board wants to do that. But essentially, you have to have this to have the liquid option as well as the other option.
It
Mr.
is
Mansur?
kind of interesting that this particular fund is one that requires a separate resolution.
Well, I don't think it's this particular fund. I think it's their resolution to let them act on our behalf, then
Well,
who can
no, we already
actually-
did that one. We already did that resolution. This is for this use of this fund.
Well-
This gets kind of interesting. I'll follow up on that, but it is kind of interesting why this one is in particular a special need. Okay, thanks.
Mr. Chair, I'd be prepared to
Okay.
make a motion to adopt the resolution as presented by PFM.
Support.
All right, any further discussion? Ms. Lane?
It's a roll call vote, thank you. Mr. Mansour?
Yes.
Mr. Atkins?
Yes.
Mr. Guzat?
Yes.
Mr. Massey?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Mr. Chair.
Yes. Item C under operational issues, the board will consider a motion to accept the 2019 Planning Commission annual report as presented. Mr. Lemata? I'm sorry, Mr. Massey?
Oh, I was just gonna make a motion.
Okay,
Should I make the motion now?
Sure.
I support.
okay, motion's been made to accept the 2019 Planning Commission annual report as presented.
I'll support that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, support, any discussion? Mr. Lemata? I'd like to ask Mr. Lloyd to come to the podium if there's some highlights of the plan that you'd like to present.
Well, thank you very much. This great opportunity for me and the planning department and building departments to let folks know how and what we're doing over there, and truly thank you for the opportunity to provide that service for the township. It's a lot of fun doing this planning and building stuff, and I appreciate you trusting me with it. This report's for the year of 2019, and before I get going too far, I do want to point out that one thing that we started doing a while ago at the beginning of this last year was putting all of our monthly reports on the planning webpage so that the public can take a look at the things we're doing, as well as these annual reports. So they're on our webpage for the public to view as well, and I just think we ought to be sharing that, and I wanted to make sure you knew that we are sharing that with the public. Let's see, just kind of walk through it if you don't mind, and of course if there's any questions on anything I'll be happy to respond. I'll quickly run through a couple of the Planning Commission members just for the benefit of the audience. We got Dan Gellings, who's the chairperson. Ed Brown is the vice chairperson. Between the two of these, we have over 40 years of experience on the Planning Commission, and that goes a long ways towards making our meetings run well and our projects turn out very successfully. Vince Bandersky's been around a while as well. He's the secretary. These three gentlemen are all part of our site plan review committee as well, so that's why I mention them. We do have a couple of newer members. We have Jay Johnson, whose father was on there for a long time. He's been on there for about a year now. And Mr. Robinson, who's right here tonight, he's also a new member to the Planning Commission, and we're breaking him slow, but breaking him in just the same. And then, of course, you know Mr. Mansour, of course, is the liaison from the Township Board. So that's an introduction of the folks there. You got myself and Maria Brown. Maria does a wonderful job. She's been here for over 20 years, and she's been doing that for quite a long time. She knows an awful lot. She's able to answer a lot of questions that customers have when they come to the counter. Helps an awful lot. We did make sure that we adequately budgeted for the continuation of the master plan. I'll talk a little bit about the master plan later, but this year did include insurances that we made sure we had enough money to pay for that thing. And then with regards to some of the zoning updates, we've continued the position we've taken for a while now with regards to the opt-out for medical, recreational, or other kinds of marijuana facilities in town, and that's still in effect today. We did adopt a new solar energy ordinance back in May of 2019, and the nice thing about that is we've had 3 new solar installations for residential households in the community. So it's working, folks are taking advantage of it, and we hope that we'll see more and more of those. We recently had a request from the Zoning Board of Appeals simply because we're getting a number of requests from the community to increase the height of accessory buildings. And since we've had a number of them, they've asked the Planning Commission to take a look at that. So we've got a commission member and myself who are in the process now of kind of opening those doors and seeing what it's going to take and what the industry standards are. Issue really is that RV parking and RV motorhomes, if you will, are just a bit taller these days, and they're looking to open and raise that garage door, and when they do, that increases the height of the building. So it's just starting to be a little bit more of a struggle, and we think we can find ways to at least accommodate a taller building as long as it's got certain setbacks and stuff. So there are some ways to go. The commission and of course the board would hear and see all of that if the commission decides to move something like that forward. So that would come your way if it is going to pass. Through the Planning Commission, the Site Plan Review Committee, the Master Plan Steering Committee, and the joint meeting that we had with the Township Board, we've had 30 meetings this past year, so we've been pretty busy. Not necessarily real busy in any one area, but overall it's been a good year, kept us busy. We had, in 2019, we did have 8 meetings with the Master Plan Committee, and we reviewed 6 of the revised sections. We had another meeting this evening, reviewed another 2 sections, so we've reviewed 8 draft sections of the master plan. We only have a couple more sections to review, but we have a few other things. So we think we're going to be about 4 more months working directly on the master plan with the steering committee. And then we'll start folding in about 2 months in, 3 months in, we'll start handing off some of the detailed review and more specific analysis to the planning commission. Some of the survey results and information, we start drafting, goals and other things. So we'll start having more group meetings and expanded meetings for the master plan. We anticipate that we'll be done around June. We do have to hold public hearings on that. That takes a 65-day period, so we got to add that to whatever time period we're putting in. We will be having an open house or 2. We'll have workshops, so we're not done with public participation yet either. What we want to do with that, so you know and the public knows, is we'll take the information we've got, the drafts that we've modified, and we'll identify the substance of the feedback that we've gotten through the surveys as well as the changes we're proposing. And what we'll do probably is just set up a series of boards and things around the room like you've seen in other open houses or workshops where the public would be able to come in and take a look, ask questions. We'd ask them to comment and provide us with feedback on some of these ideas so that we're getting as much of an exchange and as much information and input from the community as we can, because that's what this master plan really is. It's the community's document. So we'll continue to keep that open and get their information and try our best to provide the service that they're asking for. Sir?
How long will the survey be open? I had somebody question the other day how late they can respond.
Well, we took it down.
Okay.
We have double
Right.
the amount of surveys that we needed.
Okay.
We needed 400 to have a statistically valid one. We kept it open for 3 or 3.5 months or so. It's a good long time.
Okay.
We were thinking we were going to close it in October, but kind of felt like we wanted more numbers. Now that 750 or so number that I gave you does not include the surveys and the feedback we got from the students. So keep in mind we also have that section that will include feedback from a very important group in our community, I might add. Let's see, and the other thing I'll point out is, I did mention that we're doing we're taking on the recreational vehicle height standards. It's in here. The other thing I want to talk about just a little bit is just we're working towards doing a little bit more coordination with other boards, and we'll want to get back with this, with the Township Board, of course. We'll be working with the Zoning Board of Appeals. We have a liaison from the Zoning Board of Appeals, that's Ed Brown. We also have a liaison, that's from the Planning Commission to the ZBA. We also have a member of the ZBA who's Mr. Atkins, who is on that too. So hopefully if there's items or issues, that if there's something going on that's pertinent, that can continue to be conveyed to the board. So we've got good groups, we've got good people, and we've got good linkages between the boards and bodies, and we want to continue, or I shouldn't say continue as much as maybe just start to re-emphasize the need for these committees and groups, or these boards and commissions to talk once in a while, really sit down and have a conversation. It's great that we're in the middle of our master plan right now, because that's kind of forces. And since we're working to move forward on some ordinance amendments, that's kind of pushing us towards working with the ZBA. So some of it's more organic and natural, but others we're going to sort of have to force. I'd like the commission to talk with the Historic District Commission, as a matter of fact. So there's just a few things that we are going to try to work on and see about creating that, little bigger circle of friends, if you will, to make sure that issues that are happening over here in this body and that body are being considered and understood by the Planning Commission, because they're usually processing and dealing with permits and projects. Just seems to make sense. We had a good number of administrative approvals this past year. There's a whole list of them here. The one thing that we do, and we hadn't done historically, is we do have the ability now to have our staff internally look at a project, review it, and approve it without going to the planning commission. As long as it meets all of the code requirements, it's ministerial in nature. There's no discretion added to the review or the approval. So why not? It expedites the process, it moves things along, you get the same review. And the development community loves it because we're moving projects through pretty quickly. We do make sure that the planning commission has the ability to keep check on those. They get identified and notified of all of those approvals. And then, of course, as these things come in, we do, at the end of each year, give them to the board and to the commission. So if you see anything and you're wondering, if it's an issue for you that we're dealing with these administratively, bring it up. I mean, I'm not, so thin-skinned that it would bother me that you have concern about that. I'd like to make sure that we're addressing that. Because what you're getting is a very small piece of paper that's trying to show you a plan, and it's not real informative. But it's the best we can do right now with this. The one thing you could do if you wanted to look at these deeper, you can always come in and visit me. I don't mind that company. But the other thing you can do is look at this when I send it out electronically. Just zoom in on it. You'll have it on your page. So instead of printing it, if you look at it on your computer, you can see it. Or if you're interested in one, we could send you color versions, renderings, the whole thing. So we got a lot of different ways to communicate. So please let me know if any of this is in any way coming up short, or otherwise you think, God, it'd be cool if we had this information or that or whatever. So I'll stop now because I think that's about all I needed to say. Answer any questions.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Massey.
Mr. Mark.
Sure.
I have a question. The solar engine, energy.
Oh, yeah.
Can you expound on it regarding to how it benefits the residents if they have interest in it?
Sure. I'll go beyond that. I'd say, I'm not the most environmentally sensitive person in the world, but I would say it's bigger than just this community, the use of solar. So what I can talk to you about the individuals and what they get, and that is they get the benefit of free, after you've paid for the equipment, but on the daily basis, that electricity that it's generating is free. So that helps to reduce those individuals' costs. So let's say they're, running a certain piece of equipment or they've got a pool or something like that at their house. That can help reduce those costs for electricity consumption. The solar systems that are able to be put on houses, the energy cannot be sold back to the grid, if you will. There are some credits that you can get if you're generating an excessive amount that the industry or that the utility provider will give you credits for, but you can't technically sell it back like you used to. They've just changed the way they do that. So the ordinance that we put together has some pretty good criteria with regards to the appearance of these. They can't be too tall, they have to be a certain distance from the property line, they can't be too large. We want to make sure that the neighbors aren't catching glare from the reflection of the sun. Most of the material isn't reflective anymore anyway, but just in case. And then depending on the size, we also require certain ones to be screened, just in case it's large enough and close enough to a neighbor that it could be, an eyesore, if you will. So that's it. But generally speaking, it just helps to reduce their costs and makes them, I hope, feel pretty good about not putting, gases back into the atmosphere and all that. I mean, it's all about sustainability and green living and of course, cutting down your costs. That's what it does.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I have one more question.
Mr. Massey.
Do you have an estimated figure on the equipment cost?
Well, I don't, because it varies. It depends on how big it is, of course. But I'm happy to track down like an average cost for a household, if you'd like. If that's what you're getting at.
Yes.
Average price for a house?
Yes.
That's easy. We can figure that out. I'm sure there's plenty of documentation out there that, type into Google, we can track it down for you.
Okay, thank
And
you.
then we'll talk to some industry experts too to make sure that Google's got the right information out there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Lloyd? Okay. Thank you very much for the very thorough report and
sure.
great work of your committee.
Yeah, good group.
Okay. Thanks. Or committees, rather. Looking forward to getting the results of the master plan, too.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yep.
Have a good time.
So there's been a motion?
Yes, sir.
And it's been seconded?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, item D, the board will hear an update from the Parks and Recreation Subcommittee. I know we were going to meet today, but evidently there's a misunderstanding and we didn't
Yep, so I mentioned this at the committee of the whole meeting, but again, just to talk about the things that were approved at the January 6th meeting. We did approve a vision, Parks and Rec, that enriches the community. We approved a mission statement for the Parks and Rec organization, administer a coordinated system of outstanding programs, parks, and facilities in response to the passive and active recreational interests of the Grand Blanc community. So the next steps here are to get the goals, which we've identified, but to make them more measurable. And then at the meeting today, which was which I didn't get a chance to attend, the action items were to distribute. Again, from the 6th, the action items were to distribute the resumes for the candidates that have applied for the Parks and Rec position. I believe at the meeting on Monday, we identified that there were 9 or 10 have been received so far, and to distribute those to the board. And then the other action item coming out of that was for us to get a hold of the information relating to program cost, the tournament calendar, and the existing contracts. And those, I don't think we have, we didn't have them Monday, and I don't think they came today either. So we're going to keep on top of this, keep meeting, and push through to get this, to continue to get this Parks and Rec activity reorganized.
Mr. Lemina?
I did have Human Resource Director Colleen Nedzwicki was available at the 5:30 meeting. Unfortunately, it got canceled, but she was there and happy to answer any questions. She is here this evening in the audience. I believe there are 9. Colleen, is that correct? Applications received at this point, and one of the things that she wanted to share with the subcommittee and with the board was the fact that we did have it. Trustee Mansford brought up the question or the observation that on our website it showed it open through January 27th. Colleen had picked that because it costs us money to get those initial advertisements out. We typically run it for 30 days. It's how we've done it in the past, so it's what she did here. We can certainly extend it beyond that. It was posted kind of as open until filled, but I think by the first 30 days you should have your initial round of candidates for the board's review, however that process works. And we did discuss this evening that she will have electronic copies of the resumes out to all the board members that are received to date by tomorrow morning.
Yes, Mr. Layden.
I'd just like to make a comment on the MOU, just because Mr. Erb brought it up. And first of all, the city did approve the MOU. And there was a change that, actually, let me give you the history of that written form. The proposed MOU that was in the board packet was submitted for the township board packet on Friday afternoon. That version came from Attorney Griffin's office. At approximately 4 o'clock on Friday, Attorney Griffin called me and asked my opinion and suggested that we clarify some of the language regarding the MOU, and that the terms of the MOU are going to dictate how Parks and Rec operates from that date forward. And so that's that adjusted sentence that we talked about on Tuesday and that we adopted. After we adopted it, I contacted Griffin's office on Wednesday morning and asked for, because they sent it to me in PDF, I asked for a Word copy of it so I could make that change, and also change the signature blocks, because I know who Clarence is, and I knew that Jeremy Chisholm was not the superintendent. So I changed the signature blocks, corrected them, and sent a clean copy to Mr. Griffin that morning, and also a copy to Mr. Chisholm, the attorney for the schools, that morning. So all the items that Mr. Erd had correctly pointed out were resolved early Wednesday morning, and would have been resolved, except that I was locked out of the copy until Wednesday morning. So the great news, though, is that it's been adopted by the city and the township, and it's been forwarded to for the schools for adoption, and I think that's terrific news for Grand Blanc Township.
Mr.
So do we need to, we've already approved our portion.
We have. Yep.
So the school will be approving theirs next.
That's my expectation.
So just out of curiosity, when will we have a copy of that available for the public to review.
Well, I can give you an unsigned copy as soon as I get back to my, tomorrow morning, I can send that out.
I don't know if it's appropriate, but maybe we could add that to the notes here for tonight. Can we, as a part of the record of the meeting here? As add it to the record of the meeting here? Or, I don't,
The revised demo.
the revised
Oh,
MOU.
sure, absolutely, yes.
Okay,
Mr. Chair,
thank you.
Yes, Mr. Massey.
I have a question for trustee Mansour. Mansour, Al Mansour. If we got a revised copy, don't you think it would be appropriate if we had a signed copy for the residents to view?
I you know, whatever is the right thing. I just wanted to make transparency here to the community.
No, I think that's a good idea. Yep. So what we'll do, I'll get you, first of all, tomorrow morning, I'll get you the clean, unsigned copy, and then I also, we can have Supervisor Bennett sign his signature on the document, and then as soon as I get his signature, I'll run it down to the city. And so we'll do both. We're going to put the clean copy that is now under consideration by the schools, and then as soon as we get a signed copy by all 3 representatives, we'll also put that up.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Bennett?
Yes.
And then just so that the whole board hears it, I did just inform Trustee Mansour and Trustee Atkins as part of the Parks Rec Subcommittee, but I picked up a voicemail message from Chairman Brad Hester of the Parks and Rec Commission late today that he did receive the resignation letter from Interim Director Carol Newman. She's accepted a job on the west side of the state, and she'll be leaving before the end of January.
So where does that leave us staff-wise in the office for Parks and Rec?
With her absence, it would leave the recreation programmer and the part-time administrative assistant.
Okay.
I mean,
Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chair, I don't know what is appropriate for me to ask this question or not, but if it's not, please tell me, okay? And
Sure.
shut me down. So if we're losing the interim director, the next person that's in line for that person continue to do the job, that person should be compensated for his or her knowledge, right? That's just a thought.
Well, it's something, a bridge that we'll have to cross because, Mr. Laddie, what does the MOU specify in terms of the date that we actually take over from the Parks Commission?
Well, it says that we're going to take control of Creasy Park January 1st, which obviously that MOU hadn't been approved as of that date, but I think we have February 1st as a date that we take over the programming for Creasy Park and also the schools.
Okay. So it's my understanding that the board wants to take responsibility for the hiring of the Parks and Recreation Director and staff.
But Mr. Chair,
Yes,
may I interrupt you for a moment?
sure. Mr. Massey?
In the meantime, what are we gonna do before we hire a new director? Who will be?
Well, that's why I'm bringing this up. 'Cause
Oh, okay.
that's my understanding that the board wants to take responsibility for the hiring of the Parks and Recreation Director and staff.
I guess, I mean, we've already discussed that we're taking responsibility for hiring the Parks and Rec Director. We've got a couple of meetings on that now. We've accomplished a job description. We've got it posted in 4 or 5 different places, and we have resumes. So we're absolutely going to have to accelerate the review of those and work toward hire.
I would ask, for the sake of making sure that we don't hold our HR person responsible or our superintendent responsible, that we need a motion to that effect because it's outside of our current township policy.
Already had that. Yeah, I mean, excuse me, but it's my understanding that we already have established that we have a subcommittee, and that subcommittee was taking responsibility for, among other things, the hiring of the Parks and Rec Director, and that was already had a motion and approved.
I don't recall that being in the motion, but We
Certainly.
approved a committee, but
So the
But-
committee, I mean, the committee certainly by consensus was discussed and agreed on it at the December, was it 8th or 10th meeting?
so you're confident, Mr. Laddie, that it is not going to be our HR specialist and our superintendent are not going to be held responsible for the hiring of these individuals?
No, that's correct. And in fact, according to our hiring policy, I think Mr. Lima would be directly involved in negotiating terms for any vetted candidate, and he's also participating in that committee. So yeah, it's not solely his responsibility, and it's certainly not our HR specialist's responsibility. This committee has taken responsibility for that hire.
Mr. Lehman, are you comfortable with that?
From my standpoint, like I'd stated before, I just need to know what my role is. It's different than the current policy or the current procedure that we followed. I just want to make sure that my role is clarified so that from an accountability standpoint, I'm delivering what the board's required. It's outside of how we would normally handle it, and as long as that's been verified and there's consensus, and we're on camera now, so
So we are going to basically turn over the resumes to the board, and from there, the board will direct how it goes from there.
Mr. Chair, let
Whether
me
it's
interrupt you for a moment.
Mr. Massey.
You are adding something, and let me tell you what I think you're adding. If I'm wrong, if I'm not speaking the truth, correct me. When you first spoke, I thought it was a committee when the trustees spoke. Now you brought the board in. I wasn't a part of that, and I don't think the board should be involved. It should be the committee. That's my understanding, not the board. Let's clear that up now. I don't know what my
Mr.
other
Laddie, what was the board motion in the past?
I don't recall verbatim what that was, but if there's any doubt about it, adopt the motion right now.
Well, that's why I wanted to clarify it for
If
everybody's
anybody's
sake.
confused, let's get it
Right.
out. Be done with it.
Mr. Guzak?
Yeah, I just had one concern. I thought if the committee did submit this, the whole board was gonna decide yes or no. I mean, we were gonna have Mr. Limita, part of the group, he'd be going through and searching, putting his comments in, oh, I like this person, I like that person. We're still getting input from them and the HR director and the committee. And then once they whittle it down, it still comes back to the board to say, yes, do you wanna hire this person or not, right?
That's my impression.
Right.
Yeah, it's my impression too.
Mr. Atkins?
I just want to clear some things up because I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there in the public and how this whole Parks and Rec subcommittee came about and what their role is. And I know there's some over-exaggerations coming out of some areas of this board to try and bend the narrative or the outcome of this. So, taking over this park into the township is something we all want to make successful and make sure it works and it's a seamless operation. Taking this over, there was this didn't happen because we just decided one day we wanted to take over the Parks and Rec and take over our park. There were a lot of issues that led us to this decision, and it didn't come lightly. And with the day-to-day operations that Dennis is involved in and the fact that this is something different that we do not currently have as a department or a role within the township, we have decided that as a board we should be a little more involved, not in the hiring of maintenance people and the entire employee base and staff of the director. If you look at the directors that have been involved in Parks and Rec, we just lost the interim director. It was hard enough to get that interim director to accept that position as it was laid out. And ultimately it's this entire board that would be looking at the resumes, but it would follow our procedure and our policies in place. We're not breaking any of our internal policies in terms of how we would hire today. HR would still be involved. We're not taking on any liability or creating any risk for this township by doing this process. We've already heard our municipal attorney confirm that. Dennis, our our Superintendent Dennis Limita will ultimately make the hiring, the compensation offer, the hiring, present it to them, bring them in, and then that person would be under the umbrella of the superintendent. So when you hear a lot of other things that are going on, we are not hiring this person and then saying, here you go, Mr. Superintendent, you had no input, you weren't part of it. There's nothing secret going on in this subcommittee. This subcommittee, you can walk in that conference room. Many of you walk in at the end of the meeting. There's maps that cover the whole wall, the whole room. We have spent weekends in here putting together value stream maps to understand how this will flow into this township. We take this very, very seriously, and that's why we're engaged in this.
Mr. Chief,
Okay.
let
Mr.
me
Massey.
add something. Because there's a misperception among some previous board members. Now, most of the trustees are new, okay? When we came on board, the Fire Commission was a mess. Parks and Rec was a mess. We were operating under an agreement, and I think the attorney stated this, that was a mess for about 45 years. That agreement was in effect for 45 years approximately, based on what I read that the attorney wrote, okay, the board's attorney. And no one did anything to rectify anything. But, hear me very clearly, but a person would get up and say that they had a perfect board when the board was spending excess dollars by carrying other entities on their backs of the township, on the back of the township, and nothing was done. So we're taking on a great responsibility here. I mean, we didn't know how this was going to end. We was just out there planning as we go along because there was no direction for us to go. It seems like that sometime we are in disagreement or disarray, but I don't think we are. If you ever dealt with a complicated project, and I'm not talking about a board project, any personal project, you feel your way through because you don't have a prior process to use as an example. So this board didn't have a prior process. It had prior board members that were reluctant to take on the responsibility.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I want to make one comment, because this has been, and I'm looking at the minutes from December 10th that I think we just adopted. It's been 30 days and the holidays since the time we talked about the format of the discussion, first of all, about the hiring process, the discussion about the description of duties, and the discussion about the committee and the role that the committee plays, and also the role that Mr. Limita plays. And because it's not exactly clear because at that time it's not exactly clear that we've established this committee and what their roles and responsibilities are, at least in the record. I know that we just 5 minutes ago, we all said that's our basis of understanding. Let's do this. Let's make a motion that describes the committee and describes the duty of the committee and the process, just so that we have a record that everyone can refer to and rely on. Does that sound fair?
I believe so.
Mr. Chair, to Attorney Laddie, I think, David, you've heard what this board has said, but I would ask for you and your expertise to formulate that motion based on the discussion.
My understanding is that the board has created a committee of 3 members that also includes the direct involvement of Superintendent Limita to oversee the posting of the job description as approved by the Township Board, to oversee the receipt and initial review of the resumes received, and that also that committee, including Mr. Limita, will review those resumes and will provide a recommendation to the board of candidates that they believe the board should consider for hire. Is that accurate?
Mr. Mansour?
So I did the initial discussion about this, and when we spoke about it, and I can go back through my notes to be more descriptive on this, but we talked about this committee, and you've described the composition of it accurately, as my notes would say. But you've narrowly prescribed some of the aspects of this committee. The purpose of the committee was to basically establish a Parks and Rec activity in the township, and then to act as a launch or a transition, and then would work to launch or transition it into the township organization. So that was the impetus behind it. It was brand new to the township. We wanted a greater degree of direct board involvement in it because it's a new activity for the township, and with the whole idea of the committee over time transitioning this into the township structure. So that was the point. Now, obviously, hiring a director has got to be one of the first items. So we worked on a job description. We've got it posted. And we're just working to understand well. And at the same time, as Trustee Adkins has indicated, we jumped in with both feet in terms of the programming. So it's not narrowly hiring a director. It's hiring a director and then working with that director to make sure that there's a direct transmission of ideas between the board and the director in terms of how we want this activity to operate in the township.
Motion to identify the committee as described by Trustee Mansour.
Well,
Suggested.
then, yeah, because I believe that then we would also need a motion that the board has indicated they want to directly supervise the Parks and Rec director. And because that's what it amounts to if we're talking about launching, and I'm not sure about some of these nebulous terms, what they exactly mean, but it sounds to me like hiring and running. I mean, when you talk about launching a new program, what have you. So I think we need to have a little more specificity in any motion that we make. Otherwise, we're going to hold our superintendent responsible for the outcome, and we're going to be having a board committee making decisions for how things are going to run. And I don't believe it's fair to hold the superintendent or myself accountable for decisions that are being made by a subcommittee. Mr. Atkins?
I have never done something, been involved in something, or recommended something and met this much resistance. So when we talked about creating the subcommittee, I had no intent of anybody reporting to me. That's not my role. I had no intent of directing employees. That's not my role. You have certain people that want to overinflate this issue so that they can ultimately make the final decision on some of these things that are very big to the township. We see how the residents are responding to the parks. It's a great addition to our township. We want to make sure that it's a premier park. We continue to maintain the programs, and we make it even better, even bigger. You know, and I don't think there's anything wrong with having an extra set of eyes, some people that are part of a transition, if you will, a conduit between Mr. Limita and the full board. It's really hard to get the full board involved and do some of the things, as Trustee Massey brought up earlier. You know, there's a lot of things that happen along this process that are dynamic. One of the dynamic things, things can change day to day until we actually take control of Bicentennial Park. So there is no motion that I can see that adds to the one that Trustee Mansour just spoke of that would add any type of running the day-to-day operations of the park or managing or directly supervising anyone.
But when I hear the terms, Mr. Atkins, that, down the road we will hand it over to the township and the superintendent, that leads me to believe that somebody else is running it. That's why I asked for some more specificity in terms of both how will we involve the township staff in terms of the hiring, other than just having some input. So I want some specificity with that. If we're going to be involved, I want to know how we're involved. And then secondly, with regard to the supervision, if you're saying that you don't see that as part of the motion, then I would say that the portion of the motion that Mr. Mansour made as far as launching this and eventually turning it over to the superintendent and the staff, I think needs to be stricken.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Massey.
I think we would be better off if we all agreed with the attorney, what he read to us from previous meetings. I think that's what we should follow.
Could you reread your proposed motion? I don't know if you wrote it down, Mr. Laddie.
Well, my suggestion was to just recognize the committee's role in the hiring process with the assistance of staff as far as the collection of resumes go, and the continued involvement of Superintendent Limita throughout the hiring process, and then ultimately a presentation of candidates to the board to consider for hire. My motion didn't talk about who would supervise this person, because there will be a step that includes the negotiation of a contract with terms that will be presented to the board. And so I don't think you have to get to the supervision part at this point. And so my motion was just to clarify the existence and purpose of that committee. And that was only to do that to make sure that our minutes from December 10th reflect accurately the existence of the committee and the purpose of the committee.
Okay, Mr. Massey, is that the motion that you were interested in?
Yes, and that's it.
So you're making a motion?
I move based on what the attorney said.
Oh, well,
Because I can't remember everything he said verbatim.
well, okay, so nobody's proposed a motion at this point. Superintendent Limita, is that your understanding that?
I thought you were.
I thought-
providing that motion.
I had proposed
was.
language, and then Mr.
I
Mansour,
believe Trustee Mansour proposed that as a motion, correct? Or
All I went back to was my recollection of what was said at the December meeting.
okay.
And I think Mr. Laddie said that he believed it needed to be more clarity in that.
well, motion to recognize the existence of a 3-member committee with the direct involvement of Superintendent Limita to facilitate the hiring process of a Parks and Rec director for Grand Blanc Township.
I so move.
Mr. Limita, does that clarify enough your role, or?
You know, I just want to make sure, based on everything that was discussed, we changed the job description to remove the portion where the person was reporting to me, you know, again, which is fine. I just want to know how the board wants my role to be moving forward. Working with the subcommittee, gathering resumes, those will be sent out for the board's review, or to, I think, to the full board, but I don't know if the subcommittee will do the initial review. The minutes of November or December 10th said the board will be overseeing the process and hiring the director, and the board will review and decide the candidates to be interviewed and hire the candidate. So I just, you know, I want to make sure that I don't want the accountability to come back and say, well, why didn't you move this forward or whatever. As long as everybody has a clear understanding of the subcommittee, of the 3 individuals with myself are working to gather the resumes, they're going out to you. My understanding is that the board will review the resumes, select the candidates to be interviewed, and then HR can set up those interviews for, I'm assuming the board is going to come in, and either the subcommittee or the full board is going to interview the candidates. I just,
So,
if that process sounds like
yeah,
it's...
so
Mr. Mansour?
Supervisor Bennett. So I think that is what we envisioned. We had a subcommittee of the board because we didn't think we could get all 7 of us to look at all the resumes. So the whole point is to get this job out there, get it posted, get resumes back, have the subcommittee, if you will, do kind of a pre-screening with Superintendent Limita, and then, as is, I think, the policy of the board here, to be responsible for actually hiring for the township, right? I mean, board approves.
The board approves a contract presented by the superintendent
Yes.
for a vetted candidate for approval. That's what your policy says.
Yes.
Yeah.
At that point, then the superintendent takes over and supervises.
Well, he negotiates the contract.
Negotiates the contract.
Presumably, you're just more involved in the vetting.
Yeah.
Yes, that's all. Yeah.
Mr. Limita?
So then, what I said goes along with that the subcommittee will then select the candidates to be interviewed. They'll conduct the interviews as part of the subcommittee, and then the
Well, you'll be
candidate
there
is
too.
selected, and then
You're gonna be in the interviewing
right. The
process also.
subcommittee includes me.
Right.
Then the subcommittee will make the recommendation to the full board, or will negotiate an employment agreement, and that will be presented then to the full board for the hiring process.
Like normal, yeah.
Mr. Limita, how does that vary from our current process?
It only varies in that, I mean, if we're hiring somebody else, we currently, this process is the same. We take a job description, we do a posting, we submit it through Human Resources, it goes out, resumes come in, they go through a vetting process. There's a matrix that we go through, points are awarded, look at the candidates. There's a panel that generally consists of the human resource generalist, myself, and then the department director if it's in there, or if we put a panel together. Police Chief Wiles sits in on a lot of our panels, but we do panel interviews for the selected candidates. We'll go through the first or second round of interviews, bring the candidates back. And then, so it's always done with a panel interview. It's usually the human resource generalist, myself, and one other department director. So now it's a subcommittee instead of that panel.
Okay.
And then it's the same thing as far as the subcommittee or the panel will generally make the recommendation of who ultimately. I had the decision on who was going to move forward. This time it will be the subcommittee that moves it forward, which again I'm a part of. And then I'll negotiate the terms based upon what our posted job description. We already know what our current benefits are, but we'll negotiate with the individual on where those end up and what the presentation is to the board, and then based upon that, then I would submit that to the full board for approval. Much like the administrative assistant for the fire chief's agreement that you guys are being asked to review and approve this evening.
So as far as, so that's as far as the hiring. Okay. So I don't know if that's acceptable to everyone. Mr. Atkins?
With all the sensitivity around this, I think it could save the board a lot of grief, Mr. Limita, if you would put together and give this board a little more reassurance that you've got this handled, that you have an org chart, that you can paint a picture for us in the community, what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, then maybe we would have a little more reassurance in that matter. I don't think anybody on this board understands the org chart and what you're thinking, and I think it would give this board, I'm sure you've got a vision in your head or on your wall or something, but those are the things that we get concerned about, not knowing, right? Normally that would be just an operational thing, but for us this is a little different. We're real concerned. We want this to be successful. I think we all do. So all we're trying to do is offer more assistance. We're not trying to bypass or hijack a process or take away any of your statutory authority. But we would like to see some more detail on what your plan is in terms of the organizational structure of this thing.
And
Mr. Limita?
I appreciate that. We talked about the org chart on Monday evening's meeting, and what I have envisioned, if you know, the discussion that we've had over the last several months, I wasn't really sure about what my role or how this was going to come down. If it's moving forward and that's what the board needs to see from me, I can have that information for you, you know, by Monday. I'd be happy to provide you, you know, my vision of where it's going. But really, I'm carrying out your vision of where you guys want to go and what you see. So whatever direction you give me, that's what I'm here to do, is carry it out like always. And that's just, you know, once I don't want any, what I was really trying to do from my point is I just want clear direction, and you guys provided that clear direction, then I'm prepared to be off and running and carry it out. But if that's what you'd like to see, that direction that you just provided me, I'll be happy to, you know, because there's a lot of things that we're going to have to work on with the subcommittee, with especially with the interim director's position leaving. There's a lot of things that are coming up from a financial aspect and from a payroll aspect and from an employee aspect, end of the year reporting. There's a lot of things that are going to have to occur in a very short period of time, as well as before we can expend any money on this, we need to do a budget amendment and get a budget put together and have it into the township board's 2020 fiscal year budget, so that we have authorization to spend. So there's a lot of moving parts in a very, you know, short period of time. I met with staff yesterday and we discussed just the physical aspects of moving, including IT needs, office needs, how quick this all has to happen. So we started this with department directors yesterday morning at 9 a.m. in our normal staff meeting. And I can recap all of that and be happy to put it together, but like a lot of that direction will come from you guys or from the subcommittee specifically. But you know, I do appreciate just a clarification of what you need from me.
Well, I want to say that my office will be vacated this weekend, and I think we have a crew coming in on Monday to start preparing the office space. So Mr. Limita is in action with his department heads. You know, the portion of the job description that removed who the supervisor is kind of left us in limbo. So I think, you know, Mr. Atkins mentioned that we wanted some clarity. I think Mr. Limita and his department heads appreciate some clarity too in terms of who's going to be supervising staff and the direction that we want to go. So I think we've added some clarity with this latest motion in terms of how the hiring would go about and how we're going to change our normal process. And if everybody's fine with that, I would like to, after that, then look at how to make sure that we're going to have Mr. Limita in charge of supervision for the director and the supervisor. I mean the staff.
Mr. Chief.
Mr. Massey.
Let me exaggerate here. You said numerous times, and you alluded to the fact, if I got it wrong, correct me, as though this board wants to supervise someone. That's not the intent, and I don't know why you keep alluding to that. You're trying to give the residents the impression that the board wants to be in charge of the day-to-day operation. That's not the case. We created a committee for you guys to go in as a committee and iron out all of these things that are moving so rapidly that we cannot iron out tonight at the board meeting. It's left up to you guys. It's no different. Once the superintendent and the others on the committee, once they do their thing, it's going to be the same process that the superintendent normally does, the way I understand it. He goes in, you guys do the screening, they bring it back to the board and say, this is my final decision. These are the two top candidates. And that's what the superintendent has always done, and we have always made a decision based on that. But you guys would have more authority in the committee meeting than they just besides bringing it back to the board. You work out all of those details in the committee meeting.
Well, the concern I have, you mentioned, you know, that our superintendent is going to supervise, is we remove that portion from the job description that stated that the superintendent would have, I mean, the people that are looking at applying for this job right now and have, I'll tell you what, I'd be a little bit concerned applying for it when I'm not knowing who I'm going to report to, if I'm reporting to a 7-member board or I'm reporting to the superintendent. So I think if if everybody's good with your suggestion, Mr. Massey, that.
Let me say something.
Okay.
And I want everybody in the audience to hear me. And I'm talking directly to the supervisor. Don't say something that you may come back in 2 weeks and have to eat your own words, because I'm going to remind you of something, okay? I'm just going to leave it at that. Don't allude to something that in 2 weeks you may have to eat your own words, and I will remind you.
I'm not sure what I said that is out of order.
Okay, I just said.
But we did remove from the portion of from the job description as far as who this individual reports to.
So,
And Mr. Massey, or Mansour?
so two things. First, I think if we were to get 2 candidates to review here to decide on, that would be a deviation from our normal practice. Usually we have one person recommended and you have an up or down vote on it, on the contract. So that will be a change in this case, because we'll have a couple of or more of candidates for the board to seriously consider. The second item is with respect to the job posting. We have one official job posting that was out there. Anything before that was a draft. So I'm not exactly sure what the previous what the other discussion is, but we posted a job out there, and somehow 9 or 10 candidates are comfortable enough to apply for the position as it's written. So I would agree that there are still a lot of moving parts here. I agree that we're off and running in terms of getting candidates. So why don't we just get through the motion here to the role of the subcommittee, get the person hired, and then we'll continue to march the process in terms of how we move forward with the person in the township.
Mr. Atkins?
I think on a job posting, the reporting structure is a technicality. I mean, if you're reporting to the president or the vice president or the superintendent, we don't even have an org chart yet. We don't even have a candidate. Let's get a candidate in here. Let's get moving on this. That's really what's at stake here. And the other, case in point about the subcommittee. What do we hear tonight? We hear, and keep in mind, we have a lot of departments in this township. None of us on this board are asking the day-to-day details of the police department, the fire department, building, no other department. This is something new to us. We have a vested interest in this. The community has an interest in this. We, again, want it to be successful. Case in point on the subcommittee and the value of having the subcommittee is you heard here tonight a couple of things that are going on. An office is getting moved, some things are going on. There's, some people being engaged, possibly moving over to this building. Well, this board, that's the first we're hearing about it, and that's not even enough detail. Well, one could say, well, why does the board need to hear that? Well, maybe, maybe not, but I can tell you what, the public wants to know every detailed step along the way to give them the reassurance that this is happening, and if I get asked a question along the way, you can never have enough detail. And part of that subcommittee was to get these little bits and pieces of details that, or information that may or may not be relevant in the grand scheme of things, but it gets it back to the board.
Well, I would only point out that we took over the fire department in 90 days notice, or maybe less. Was it 60, Chief? 60 days notice. I don't recall us updating the board weekly on, hey, we hired painters, hey, we hired a plumber, we hired people to put in the kitchen, what have you. One of the things that you do as a board is you hire somebody to lead and then you get out of their way. We direct them what we want to have done. If our superintendent has to come back to this board or committee with every decision they make as far as what color we're going to paint the office for the Parks and Rec, which building, what office within the building they're going to move into, we're going to be, we have staff people that if we're going to continue seamlessly with Parks and Rec, we aren't going to be able to have enough committee meetings to make it happen. We've got an interim director who's leaving, who knows how quickly. We have no staff that is programming other than one individual there. We need to act quickly. We can't have our superintendents, and I've heard on the one hand that, well, let's just cross the bridge as far as what we put in for who's supervising down the road. And then I'm hearing, no, we had no intention of ever supervising staff. So I'm hearing mixed messages. So that's why I want something clarified as far as who is going to supervise the director and the staff, because I'm hearing, well, we don't need to put it in writing. We'll cross that bridge down the road. So what if we're saying that the superintendent is going to supervise the staff, then what's the problem with putting it in writing or in terms of a motion? Because I've heard it both ways, and that was one of the reasons for removing it from the job description, was that we didn't necessarily see the supervisor or the superintendent supervising this person. In fact, that's why I asked for the legal opinion, is because I felt as though it was diminishing the authority of the supervisor and the superintendent, and the personnel responsibilities that go along with that position. So, to make a long story short, I guess, if we want to hamstring the superintendent and have him report every step of the way to a committee, we're not going to make a seamless transition we're going to have a tough enough time doing it, just letting our superintendent make decisions on the fly. Because with being short-staffed, these programs are running currently, we're taking registrations, what have you. So with that, we've got a motion, I think, that Mr. Laddie had put forward in terms of the hiring process. But I also want to make sure we clarify either in that motion or a second one, who is going to be supervising this individual and the staff and who they report to, whether it's a 3-member committee, whether it's the board, and also to clarify, if Mr. Limata is in charge of this transition, he needs to have his hands untied to be able to do it without having to come back to a transition committee with each specific step. Ms. Lane?
Mr. Chairman, based on the motions that are going on right now, the last one I have was made by Mr. Massey to recognize the existence of a 3-member subcommittee with the director's involvement to facilitate the hiring of the Parks and Rec director for Grand Blanc Township. I would like to at least get that one decided on and closed off at this point in the discussion, if it's
Support.
agreeable to the board.
So
I
the
am
motion?
supporting Mr. Massey's motion as I have it.
Okay, so you're supporting it?
Yes, sir. And
Mr. Laddie, your thoughts on that motion?
I don't,
Okay,
I understand what the motion is.
okay. Mr. Limata, does that clarify enough for you in terms of your responsibility and your HR specialist?
I believe so.
One of the things that I brought up at our previous meeting is just to realize that as supervisor, I also have the ability to sit in on any committee. So,
And that's why, Mr. Chairman, when I know of the subcommittee meetings, I'm posting them and they're on the door.
I appreciate that, Clerk
So,
Lane. Okay, so there's a motion and there's been support.
I'm going to say call the question,
Any
Mr.
further
Chair.
discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those say no. No. Okay, I would like to clarify at this time the role of Mr. Limata in this transition and the supervision of this person when they are hired. I've heard that we aren't going to, our intention is not to supervise this person or the staff. I've also heard that we're going to turn this over to the township and Mr. Limata eventually. So I guess I want some clarification on what you see Mr. Limata's role in supervising this person and the staff.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Massey.
I have something to say.
Okay.
For whatever known reason, you're sounding like a person that's insanity. So, for us to respond to you, we are better off not to respond to you. We just sat here all night waiting for you to calm down because something has happened to you. We keep telling you, okay, it's the committee and the superintendent. The superintendent said he was happy with it.
With the
Because
hiring process.
how many times are we going to discuss to say when the hiring process is over? I think Trustee Lunny said that it goes back to the normal process. How many times do we have to say that?
As
We-
long as we have consensus
We
on it,
only,
I'm fine.
we only have a committee simply because this is not a normal process. That's the only reason we have a committee. But you keep raising the issue as though that we're kids. You act as though that we don't have common sense. You act as though that we don't know the statute of a supervisor. Well, I sat in only in the committee. You don't have to remind us. We know that. I don't know why you keep reminding us this. So I have no further comments about this issue, period.
Good.
The meeting should be adjourned.
Somebody can call for that if they choose to, but
Yeah.
anyways,
Mr. Chair,
I'm not clear on, so there's a motion.
there is no motion now. The last
Okay, all right.
motion was
Was
approved.
approved, okay.
Could we, Mr. Chair, on behalf of the board, I've heard your concerns. It's important right now for this board to be unified and to work with Mr. Limita to hire the next Parks and Rec director. Let's let this matter quiet down tonight and move on to the next item on the agenda.
I
which-
disagree. I want clarification for Mr. Limita's sake, as far as who is going to be directing this person when they're hired. If there is none, then Mr. Limita is, in fact, the superintendent and does supervise this individual unless this board moves otherwise. Mr. Atkins?
Okay, I thought we were much more professional than this. I will make a motion that the superintendent of the township will manage and oversee the Parks and Rec department as it is brought into this township, operational, those employees, and how that may be. Just like it is today.
I'll support that. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay. Anything else on the MOU or the Parks and Rec? Ms. Wicki, any concerns in terms of HR policy with regard to hiring that you need to cover with the board? Okay. All right, with that, I am going to move to item E. And I would ask you to consider a motion to approve the authorization of the Fire Department Administrative Assistant Employment Agreement and authorize the supervisor and clerk to sign the agreement.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, there were a couple of points in this employment agreement that are different than the administrative assistant to the police chief. And I simply wanted, for continuity and everything, was to make it the same. I don't know if the board has read this, but again, it might offend you, and I'm sorry, but for example, in item 1, term of employment, the position is at will and the employee shall serve at the pleasure of the township fire chief. The fire chief would perform the annual performance and make a recommendation to the board. And this agreement shall only be modified or amended by the township board and the employee. And that would make it consistent with the police chief's administrative assistant agreement.
Mr. Limita?
It already says in there, this agreement shall only be modified or amended by a writing signed by duly authorized representatives of the township board and the employee. And the other, I don't care if she adds what she would. This agreement is the same agreement that my administrative assistant has, and it's pretty much word for word the same agreement that the HR generalist has. So
Well, it's probably more up to date because Sherry's was probably earlier, or the this one that she's
So if
reading
it's
from.
about, the only thing you're really adding is that that she'll be reviewed by the fire chief. That's already I mean, it happens, and it says in here, the superintendent shall review the employee's performance annually and may recommend increased compensation to the township board at any time. Part of our review process, as you guys are well aware, occurs in January. We review them and meet with them in February. Any comes to the board in March, and that's the same process that we follow with all the other administrative assistants who are operating under the same agreement.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Massey?
I don't see a need to make all of them sound just alike. I mean, they mean the same, in essence, right, Superintendent?
They do.
Okay, they mean the same. So it's just like superintendent write a letter, and I write a letter, we saying the same thing, but it reads different. The meaning is the same. So I don't see why there's a big deal about it. I'm okay with it.
So there was a motion, was it supported? I think it was.
Yes,
Okay.
Did you support it, Mr. Mayor?
yes, I support it.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. I don't have anything on strategic planning, but,
Mr. Supervisor?
yes.
For those of you who may or may not know, Melissa Roberts is the administrative assistant to the fire chief that we are talking about. She is in the audience. Even Melissa, would you stand up? I just want to make sure the board knows who you are and they.
Do I know her?
Thank you, Mr. Lehman.
If you've been over to the police department and fire department, you do.
And thank
Mr.
you.
Mansour, anything on planning and Metro Alliance?
No, we just heard from Director Lloyd on the Planning Commission, and nothing new on the Metro Alliance.
One of the things that we need to do is to reappoint you to the Metro Alliance. Would you be accepting of that?
Sure.
Okay.
May I?
We also have Monica Shapiro that has served on that as well. I haven't spoken with her, but I would move that we appoint her as well if this board, if there's a consensus.
Who is that?
Monica Shapiro, she's served on it for the last several years.
Is she here?
She is not.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Chair, I'd be glad to accept your recommendation and reappoint Mr. Mansour and Monica Shapiro to the Metro Alliance.
Second.
Thank you.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Mr. Atkins, anything with regard to parks and zoning?
No.
Okay. I don't think we have anything from the fire commission.
No, Mr.
We're taking a
Chair,
break from that.
allow me to say something.
Mr. Massey.
But I need you, the answer comes from you,
Okay.
about the light at Emory Road and Grand Blanc Road. Can you
Okay.
give us some update on that, please?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on to our treasurer, Mr. Buzak, anything? No. Clerk Lane?
I would like to remind the community that we have moved Precinct 2, which is the presidential streets, and Precinct 11, which are the streets between Dort and Saginaw, to Twin Cities Baptist Church for 2020, and the new Precinct 16, which are at Fenton and Grand Blanc Road, the triangle, I'm going to call it, up to I-75 with Thornridge, and those apartments were now separate, a new precinct, and they will be going to West Middle School to vote. And further on, those are very definitive and easy to understand, and in a few weeks we'll be sending out notices to where we have had to modify other precinct boundaries to better accommodate the voters. But those are three areas that are easy to envision, and their cards went out this week.
Okay.
And I do, as a reminder to the board, per the January meeting, Mr. Laddie and I agreed on having at our January 28th meeting the public hearing for Grand Blanc Estates, which is a subdivision on the west side of Center Road, just south of Maple Road. And they had a wonderful turnout with their petitions to have their road redone. It's a short, small, older subdivision.
I would just ask Ms. Lane, as we mentioned before, that in fact I ran into somebody today at the post office who was asking me about the changes in the precincts where they would be voting. And I think we need to make sure we make a concerted effort to, whether it's through social media, mailings, what have you, to identify to residents where they will be voting with the given changes, because this individual will say, hey, I heard about it. And actually, they work on elections, and where is it moving to? And I said, you're going to get all that information shortly.
I am going to make all of that very, very clear, and that's why I'm introducing it in small very succinct, describable boundaries so that people can see that portion, because nobody other than the apartments will be going, and the ones I just told you are going anywhere different. Everybody else in the south end is going to be going to the same school or Mason Elementary. They'll simply have different numbers because we're adding not only 16 but 17 to accommodate our voters. So we're gonna, as I said, I'm going to do everything to make it easy for all of our voters.
Okay. I'm going to skip over myself and ask, I'll reserve my comments for later. Mr. Limita, anything?
Just a quick, provide a quick update to the board. We talked a little bit on Tuesday, and just want to let you know that we continued negotiations with the POAM unit for patrol and dispatch today. We had great conversations. I appreciate the efforts by the negotiation team from the police department. I think we worked pretty hard on clarifying some language. I don't really have anything to bring to the board at this time. We'll be meeting again in the near future, sometime next week or the week after, for a response back from the union. But I told you on Tuesday that maybe I would be able to provide an update this evening, and so my update is really we'll be waiting for a response, but we met all day today and covered a lot of ground, and I'm very pleased with the tenor and tone of the negotiations. I believe we're making great progress to be able to recognize the hard work of our police department dispatch, and I think we'll be able to bring an excellent agreement to the board very soon.
Okay, Mr. Laddie?
Nothing to add?
Okay. In terms of the stoplight at Embury and Grand Blanc Road, it was installed shortly before Christmas. A week or so before that, it was on flashing yellow. They put up signage that there's a new light installed. On December 26th, actually, the light went live, and it was as if, I don't know, something great happened, because I saw social media pictures and I was getting texts from people saying, hey, we finally got the light. There were people that weren't happy with it, but it also brought out a number of other individuals that want a light at their intersection. And so I've directed them to the road commission, those people that want a light at their intersection. And it took a long time, but the road commission had to study the intersection and the traffic flow. I go through the intersection numerous times a day, and I see that it's working well with the Dort Highway light. I don't see any conflict there, and that was my biggest concern. But it is making it much easier for the traffic to flow through that area without substantial backups. Okay, I want to make a few statements, and I'm going to edit a few of my remarks, so bear with me if I'm a little bit disjointed. Might go along with what Mr. Massey said as far as I'm going crazy here, but anyways, given our decisions tonight, I'll alter it slightly. But I'm not going to attempt to respond to all the accusations, statements, misstatements, and innuendos tonight from our Tuesday's Committee of the Whole meeting. Instead, I'll say that while both legal opinions state it is possible to have this board directly in charge of staff and hiring, they also both say it's not advisable. If we did that, we would be moving in a direction that department heads and staff would need to be in the good graces of the board and politically aligned with them to be hired or to keep their positions. In the past, this is what occurred. We went to a hired superintendent to get away from this political hiring process, I believe. At least that's what I'm told. By having a non-elected individual hire and supervise staff, it allows for the best candidates to be hired. By having a non-elected, non-political superintendent, we get rid of any political cronyism. A good board hires a great person to lead and then gets out of the way. We govern by setting a budget, making sure that we stay within budget, and communicate to our superintendent through policies. And I believe that if we went the route of directly supervising and hiring, that we would be at increased risk of liability for the township and our own personal risk as board members if we shed our governmental immunity. crossing the line from being policymakers to directing staff and operations is a huge mistake that I definitely do not support. I appreciate the votes that we took tonight, and I think it gives Mr. Lemet, our superintendent, the one employee that this board directs. I think it gives him some clarification on how we want this situation handled, and I look forward to moving forward at this point. I think we put behind us the issues we've had over this topic. We have to move forward at a very rapid pace if we want to have a seamless transition. And so I look forward to Mr. Lemata putting together a plan for the transition and making it happen rapidly, because February 1st is coming upon us quickly, and we have very little staff in terms of programming to handle it with the departure of the interim director. So, you know, one of the things that we as a board have to do is when we decide on things is we decide whether we all agree or not, and then move forward. And I'm hoping that we can do that after tonight. So with that, I have no further comment. Mr. Adkins?
Just to add one thing, just to make sure that we don't lose sight of it, I'd like to make sure we can get on the agenda coming up to revisit and start talking about wells for irrigation and roads and some of the subdivisions, some of the requests. I think we need to accelerate some conversation and some action around those items potentially.
Okay. We'll put those on the agenda.
Mr. Chair, if there's
Yes.
no other discussion, I would move that this meeting be adjourned.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.